Hey guys, Eric from Updraft Model Works here, and I want to give you a quick update on where I'm at with the Have Blue project. I'm currently working on the landing gear, and it's been an interesting study to try and research what type of landing gear this aircraft actually used. There's not a lot of photos out there. There's not much information. You can find a few articles with a variety of different pieces of information suggesting different landing gear that may have been used inside the aircraft. And of course, the Have Blue was kind of cobbled together with as many off-the-shelf parts as possible. And that was partly for cost, but also for security reasons, just to minimize the risk that someone could figure out what they were working on. So I've done a lot of research, tried to look through photos very closely, tried to look through various articles that folks have written over the years, and I found some interesting things. So first, spent some time looking through some of the photos and tried to identify whether or not the landing gear was anything I could recognize. So in terms of the nose gear, you can actually look at this, and I spent a lot of time looking at a variety of aircraft. I had seen some comments that maybe F5s or T-38s had been used. However, on closer inspection, none of the forks for the nose wheel or any of the scissors and everything on the front looked anything like any of the aircraft that I had seen suggested. So I kept looking around and eventually found one that actually seemed to actually be a pretty good fit. And that appears to be the F-104. Now this could make sense partly from the standpoint it's another Lockheed aircraft. But the way the fork comes back and the way the actuation moves up forward and the size and shape of the tire all seems to be fairly consistent with a late model F-104. So I'm pretty convinced that that's the case. In addition to that, I did see one comment from one engineer from Lockheed in an article that suggested that the aircraft had used F-104 main gear and T-38 nose gear, but I think those may have been swapped. So my thought was, well, maybe the T-38 gear is used in the mains and the nose gear was the F-104. After doing some more look at the main gear, T-38, the landing gear doors, of course, come towards the middle of the aircraft. They don't swing forward like they do on the Have Blue, so spent some more time trying to figure out what could possibly go on there. It's quite possible that in order to actuate the gear forward, that Lockheed had designed it such that they changed the orientation of the tires and just rotated the whole fork and the whole trunnion and everything and just made it to go forward. It does look like the forks on the main gear do not look like anything else I could find. So it's quite possible that they just replaced that lower portion of the main gear just so that it could rotate around. Now that may have required some welded on fittings to handle the little scissor part in the back that helps kind of keep the wheel straight and provides a place for the brake lines, etc., to move around so without getting caught in the oleo strut. So it's possible that they went through some extra effort there. I couldn't find anything that easily could be recognized off the shelf for that. I'd seen some suggestions of maybe even A-10 landing gear, which makes more sense for like the F-117, but that's a much bigger airplane. The Have Blue aircraft was more on the size of a T-38, so it's much smaller and lighter. So additionally, I started playing around with the CAD. So I started trying to design the main landing gear, assuming it was a T-38, and just see how that fit. So got some dimensions from a book, which, well, I don't have that in front of me, but I will pull it out. Oh, wait, here it is. So it's one of the Dayco books. This has in the back some line drawings for a T-38. And so that includes some of the main and front landing gear. So check that out for sizing. I researched what size tires are used on the T-38, scaled the drawings, tried to see how that fit. So when I plugged it into the CAD geometry, assuming that I've rotated the whole gear assembly 90 degrees, Something kind of interesting came out of that. If you've seen F5 or T38 landing gear, they have kind of a forward rake to them. The tire sits forward of where the strut actually comes up into the wing. And that makes for an interesting angle. When you rotate it 90 degrees, the gear tends to come a little bit towards the middle of the aircraft as it comes up. And one thing you may notice with the pictures of the Have Blue is that those landing gear actually do come a little bit inboard. So originally, when I drew up the first models, I didn't have the landing gear in place. I just used some existing photos to try and estimate where those gear doors would be. And it turns out that that angle is very close to the same angle that the landing gear tends to come up from a T38. So it's quite possible that is the case. So you can probably see in the CAD geometry, it actually fits well when it rotates up. The gear kind of moves a little bit inboard, as well as positioning the tire in about the right location where you'd expect it to be. So it's certainly possible that they used a modified T38 gear, and that's what I'm going to go forward with, assuming that that was the case, unless someone else can provide some better documentation to explain a different theory on that. Now, one thing about the T38 is they do have fairly unique tires and wheels. They have a very kind of large tire rim and a very narrow tire. And looking at the photos of the Have Blue, it does not look like that aircraft used T38 wheels and tires. So I tried to look and see whether or not it might be an F5. Does not appear to be the case either. F5 have slightly larger tires, but the shape wasn't quite right. The brake assembly on the main gear also didn't look quite right. So spent a lot of time looking around at different aircraft to see what might actually have been used there. And the best fit I could actually come up with was an A37 Dragonfly. So if you look at the tires on an A37, which it's hard to find good pictures because there's usually some big fuel tanks right close to the landing gear. But if you do get a good shot of it, you can actually see that the tire geometry looks very similar to what you can see in the Have Blue photos. And the brake system that's there on that wheel looks very similar to what I can see on the Have Blue. So it's quite possible that they actually use the A37 wheel and tire and brake assembly on the fork that they built for the landing gear. And it looks like that may be custom from basically the oleo strut down to where the brake assembly is. So that's kind of what I'm going to start using as the basis for my design in the future, and so we're going to move forward with that. I have to go get some more information on the F104 nose gear. I'll see why they didn't use the T38 gear for the nose. I'm not sure. It's similar space, but if I had to guess, it may be that they wanted something a little more rugged just because the Have Blue didn't have a lot of pitch authority and they're afraid that the nose may come down a little hard. So maybe there's some minor geometry issues that caused them to go that route. But in any case, that's my best estimate as to what's actually was used on the Have Blue. But again, there's very little documentation out there, at least in the public domain. So if anybody has anything better, please let me know. But for now, that's what we're going to go with. So stay tuned for any further updates. I'll continue to do updates as I work on the design for this aircraft and let you know how and why I'm making the decisions I am for a subject that really doesn't have a lot to go off of. And so we're going to have to make some educated guesses. But appreciate it. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again next time.